Athlete Leaders for Social Change, Jim Abbott. Left-handed pitcher Jim Abbott is probably the most celebrated athlete with a major disability of his era. Born with a deformed right arm, Abbott was already a national hero before signing a professional contract with the California Angels in 1988. As a sophomore pitcher for the University of Michigan in 1987, he was named the best amateur athlete and the top amateur baseball player in the nation, and became the first U.S. pitcher to beat the Cuban national team in Cuba in 25 years. As a junior, he garnered a gold medal as a member of the 1988 U.S. Olympic baseball team, crowning his amateur career by beating Japan in the final game in Seoul, South Korea. In his first season in professional baseball, he won a spot in the starting rotation of the pennant-contending Angels without an inning of minor league seasoning and established himself as a top-flight major league pitcher. Abbott's right arm ends about where his wrist should be. He doesn't have a right hand, just a loose flap of skin at the end of his underdeveloped arm. Otherwise, he was a strapping 6'3", 200-pounder in his prime whose physique could have served as a model for the ideal baseball player. Abbott, who retired in 1999, pitched with a right-hander's fielder's glove perched pocket down over the end of his stubbed right arm. At the conclusion of his delivery, he would deftly slip his left hand into the glove and be ready to field the ball. After catching the ball, he would cradle the glove against his chest in the crook of his right arm and extract the ball with his left hand, ready to make another throw. Observers invariably marveled at how smoothly and efficiently he could catch and throw the ball with one hand. Jim Abbott's parents were still teenagers when he was born in Flint, Michigan on September 19, 1967. Having a child at such a young age was difficult enough, especially a child with a disability, but Mike and Kathy Abbott resolved to make their son's life as normal as possible. Mike Abbott sold cars and worked as a meat packer, and Kathy took courses at home while raising Jim. Eventually, both parents finished college and went on to successful careers. Mike in management and Kathy as a teacher, and later an attorney. Jim's parents always encouraged him to try things and helped him acquire confidence. We decided that if Jim wanted to play sports, then to let him try, said Mike Abbott in a 1998 USA Today interview. I helped out with some things, but in the end, it was all Jim. It had to be. Jim started showing an interest in sports at an early age. Trying to nudge him toward a sport that didn't depend on the use of his hands, his parents bought him a soccer ball. But Jim didn't really like soccer. After all, every other kid in the neighborhood was playing baseball, so that's what he wanted to do. Ironically, it was Jim's younger brother Chad who became a soccer player. So Jim Abbott began developing the remarkable hand-eye coordination that would allow him to do with one hand what others did with two. He spent hours throwing a rubber ball against a brick wall and catching it on the rebound. His father helped him develop the technique for handling his glove hand switch, which allowed Jim to throw and catch the ball with the same hand. Over the years, he continued this drill, moving closer and closer to the wall and making the glove transition faster and faster. When Jim began school, he was fitted with a mechanical hand made of fiberglass and metal, but he hated the prosthesis, which he called a hook, because it frightened some of his classmates and made him self-conscious. Eventually, his parents stopped making him wear it. At the age of 11, Jim joined a Little League team and threw a no-hitter in the first game he pitched. Despite his early success, most people figured the competition would soon pass him by. In fact, at every step, from Little League on, he kept hearing that his playing days would probably end at that level. But at each new level, Jim proved his doubters wrong. When he entered high school at Flint Central, his new coach doubted Jim would be able to defend his position adequately. But Jim actually fielded well enough to play first base and the outfield when he wasn't pitching. Even his hitting was exceptional. Jim batted from the left side, wrapping his left hand around the bat and the stub of his right arm. He was able to generate remarkable power, blasting 7 homers and batting an excellent .427 as a senior. On the mound that year, he won 10 games and lost 3, with an incredibly low 0.76 ERA and averaged more than 2 strikeouts per inning pitched. Jim was also the backup quarterback for Flint Central until the end of his senior year, when he started the last 3 games, passing for 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. In addition, he was the squad's punter, averaging 37.5 yards per kick as a senior. His first national exposure came when his high school football accomplishments were featured on NBC's The NFL Today pregame show. Abbott was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays out of high school in the 36th and last round of the draft, but turned down their $50,000 bonus offer to attend the nearby University of Michigan. Despite the major league offer and his high school achievements, colleges with top baseball programs didn't heavily recruit him. There were still some reservations about his disability, and Abbott himself admitted to having some initial doubts about his ability to play college baseball. But they were quickly dispelled. As a freshman, he was named Most Courageous Athlete in 1986 by the Philadelphia Sports Writers Association after posting a record of 6 wins against 2 losses. The season was not without embarrassment, however. After his first college game, the modest young hurler was mortified and suffered an unmerciful razzing from his teammates when the press held the team bus up for over an hour to interview him. Over the next 2 seasons, Jim continued to develop as a pitcher and began to think seriously about a career in professional baseball. In 1987, he pitched the Wolverines to first place in the Big Ten Eastern Division standings, and then to the conference championship and threw a shutout in the NCAA tournament. For the season, he won 11 games against 3 losses. He then earned a spot on the U.S. National Amateur Baseball Team, Team USA, and on the warm-up tour through his 3-hit complete game victory against the vaunted Cuban team in front of 50,000 spectators. In the Pan American Games, he not only carried the flag for the U.S. delegation, but also won 2 games without giving up an earned run as Team USA captured a silver medal. For the year, his efforts earned him the Sullivan Award, being chosen over hurdler Greg Foster and basketball star David Robinson as the outstanding amateur athlete in the country. He then beat out future Major League stars Jack McDowell, Robin Ventura, and Ken Griffey Jr. for the coveted Golden Spikes Award given to the top amateur baseball player. Abbott had another fine season at Michigan in 1988, becoming the first baseball player to ever be named Big Ten Conference Player of the Year. He then pitched the U.S. Olympic team to victory over Japan with a 5-3 complete game effort, which he still considers his biggest thrill in sports. After his Olympic triumph, Abbott decided to forego his last year of college eligibility to enter the professional ranks. He was selected by the California Angels with the 8th pick in the first round of the amateur draft and negotiated a $207,000 bonus. As happened whenever Jim moved up to another level in sports, skeptics came out of the woodwork to question whether a player with one arm could perform at the next level. The familiar old questions about his ability to defend his position resurfaced. On bunts and slow rollers, Abbott often didn't have enough time to field the ball with his glove and make the transfer, so he usually discarded the glove and fielded bunts barehanded. In high school, an opposing coach once ordered the first 8 batters to bunt. After the first one reached base, Jim shut down the bunting game by retiring the next 7 in a row. Of course, he had to pass the same test in college, and the big leaguers would also give it a try. But once again, Abbott answered with great coordination and quick reflexes. The 1989 edition of the Angels that Abbott joined as a rookie was a talented team, legitimate pennant contenders. They'd finished 4th to Kansas City in 1988 and featured a solid pitching staff that had been bolstered by the offseason acquisition of veteran ace Bert Blyleven, who already had more than 250 major league victories under his belt. It didn't seem likely that a raw 21-year-old rookie could crack the rotation. Up to that time, only 15 players had made their professional debut in the major league since the establishment of the amateur draft in 1965. Still, fewer enjoyed successful careers while most quickly faded into oblivion. Everyone assumed Jim Abbott Everyone assumed Abbott would be farmed out to gain needed experience, but he made the team out of spring training and edged into the starting rotation. Injuries to other members of the rotation, as much as his own performance, allowed Abbott to make the opening day roster. But there was still a good deal of second guessing. Many felt Abbott's retention was more about public relations than fielding the best roster. It's true Abbott was a media sensation. His first spring appearance was in a B game that had to be moved from a practice field to the main stadium to accommodate the throng of fans and media representatives. At the post-game press conference, Abbott patiently discussed his pitching, fielding motion. "I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. Now it was as natural as tying my shoes," he said to reporters, leaving them to contemplate the complexity of tying one's shoes with one hand. As with the beginning of every new phase in his career, Abbott's first regular season start was a major event. The media, including 4 television crews from Japan, converged on Anaheim Stadium in full force for the grand debut. Jim lasted less than 5 innings and racked up his first major league loss, but left to a standing ovation from the huge crowd. Baseball America ranked his debut second only to Jackie Robinson's breaking of the color barrier in terms of historical significance. After another defeat, Abbott beat the Baltimore Orioles in his third start and settled down to pitch good baseball the rest of the season. He ended the year with 12 wins against the same number of losses. The dozen victories were the most major league wins by a pitcher in his first professional season since long-forgotten Ernie Wingard won 13 in 1924 for the old St. Louis Browns before fading into obscurity. The Angels finished the 1989 season in third place, and Abbott was voted the club's Rookie of the Year. He was also named the most inspirational player by the Anaheim chapter of the Baseball Writers Association of America. Okay. Abbott's deft handling of the constant public pressure may have been his most impressive accomplishment, however. Handsome and articulate, he was interviewed countless times by the major networks and publications. He turned down repeated book offers and received tons of mail, including a personal telegram from Nolan Ryan before his first start. Hall of Famers Ernie Banks and Bobby Doerr asked for his autograph, and 363-game winner Warren Spahn called him his hero. Jim studied communications in college and was better prepared than most 21-year-old rookies to handle the crush. His maturity and cooperation with the press and the public won him a legion of loyal supporters, and he naturally became an inspirational role model for kids with all kinds of disabilities.